Hello, hello, and how are you doing? This is Temple Robinson with the Academy for Coaching Excellence with our Coach Spotlight on Tina Shaw. And we have the opportunity to get to know Tina. Tina primarily works with leaders who truly care about their people and want to improve their leadership effectiveness. She supports her clients to discover what is meaningful and important to them along with their unique talents so they can lead with their strengths, achieve more, and have more enjoyment in their lives. Tina also loves working with teams who are stuck in firefighting mode and want to improve the ways they work together so they can consistently meet team goals while improving relationships and morale by bringing out the best in one another. So, without any more ado, I would like to introduce you all to Tina Shaw.
Hey, so good to be here. Thank you, Temple. I'm really honored
Thank,
to be here.
thank you, Tina. We are so honored to have you here with us today. Why don't you share with us? Why did you get into coaching in the first place? What is your background?
So, my background is in training and development and human resources. Originally, I was a trainer in like the operations side of the business, teaching new hires how to do their job. And then the corporate people would come in and do trainings on soft skill, what we call soft skill, which is really the hard stuff. Uh, and I'm like, I want to do that. And I discovered that that sort of training usually fell under the HR umbrella. And so I moved out of, at the time, I was in the insurance industry, moved out of that industry in order to focus in an HR role, had to kind of start from the bottom and work my way back up with the goal of getting into more of a talent development, organizational development type specialty. And that's what I did. And I ended up leading the learning function at an organization. I was at the division level and then promoted up to the enterprise level, which not long after that, there was a big downturn in the economy that resulted in major reductions in force, and the entire training department was pretty much eliminated. And so I got laid off. And that is what led to my coaching career.
Wow, your story is so fascinating. What I love the most about your story is how you really identified what would be your ideal role when you were initially working in corporate America and having the tenacity to switch and start from the bottom to then work your way up. That shows a lot of courage and direction in terms of exactly what you want to do. And then the resilience that you showed and to then say,
Hmm.
thank you very much for what just happened. I'm going to
Mhm.
experience vulnerability and move on and create my own coaching firm or practice.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my third layoff in my career. And each time I got laid off, I ended up getting more intentional about what I wanted next, and shifted direction in my career and ended up in a better place than I had left, or was, you know, that left me. I don't know. So, yeah, I've always been sort of a glass half full kind of outlook. And I hear that resilience word a lot applied to me. So I appreciate that. And I want to acknowledge for all of those out there who might be experiencing something that's hard is resilience doesn't mean you don't feel the impact. You do feel the impact and you look at what's possible now.
When I listen to what you're saying, it also reminds me of how we define vulnerability, being vulnerable, rather. And it's when we allow the winds of life to just go over us versus and being a stand for yes, we're going
Mhm.
to interact with this versus pushing this away and being in a stuck place. And it's interesting how you talked about resilience because when I was listening to someone said, when you're being resilient, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel
No,
good. And then when you get to the end, you see, oh my goodness, look at everything that I did. So Thank you for those encouraging words. They encouraged me at this moment.
Thank you. Yes, I've been encouraged by a lot of people along the way. So thank you.
So with that, now when you came to ACE, you were already certified by the ICF at the PCC level, which is the level that most people aspire to. So could you share more about your experience when you entered into coaching and what motivated you to get the PCC? And then what motivated you to get even further training with ACE?
So yeah, so part of that story of the layoff that happened that led to my coaching was when I promoted to that enterprise level position. There was a PCC external coach that was working with the leadership team of a larger division that I inherited when I moved up to the enterprise level. So I came from a smaller division and now I was over the entire enterprise. And she was the one who told me what ICF was. I'd never heard of it, even though I had hired executive coaches for people at the division level. Uh, I asked, do you know an executive coach to other people? And the ones that I hired were primarily retired executives who hung out their coach shingle, didn't necessarily have any specific coach training. So what they were doing may not have been what I call true blue coaching, and likely wasn't the ontological approach either. But she told me, what it meant to be an ICF coach, the fact that there was no regulation around coaching, no requirement that you have training. Anyone can call themselves a coach. And she was very, very good at what she did. She was a PCC. She's now an MCC. And the day before I learned I was laid off, I was on vacation with my husband, and we had a little bit of a tiff. And he said he wanted a divorce. And we'd been married 28 years. And I was like, my jaw dropped. Like, are you kidding me? This is like nothing. And then I realized, we keep the same cycle, the same pattern keeps coming up. And I'm not very happy. I have periods of happiness because I look on the bright side. Uh, but we have this thing keeps happening over and over. And we'd been to marriage counseling. Um, the next day I learned about, so I said, okay. I'm like, I was on the cusp of 50. I'm like, if we're going to get divorced, I'd rather it was now than when I'm 55 or 60. It's just going to be that much harder to start over. And when I got home, he booked a flight to fly home because we were in Canada at the time. And I had my car, so I drove home over 2 days. And the odd thing was, and then I learned the next day that I was laid off. And oddly, my reaction was after crying, my reaction was, I'm not tied down to anything anymore. My daughter was grown and out of the house. My marriage looked like it was ending at that point. I didn't have a job anymore. And so the thing that came to me was I could go anywhere, I could do anything. When I got home, this coach, PCC coach, her name is Tracy, still is. She called me to see how I was doing with the layoff. And I said, I've been laid off before, and I always end up in a better place. I have good skills, a good reputation, and I'm very involved in my professional network, which at that time was the Association for Talent Development, which is a trainers organization. And I said, so I don't know if I'm going to end up getting another job or if I'm going to go into self-employment because that's been on my list to do. I may go that way. And I said, but what has me, thrown for a loop is even though I feel like it's the right decision, it's scary when I think about the realities of getting divorced at my age when I got married in my early 20s. It's like I've been out of the dating pool. Internet wasn't really a thing when I got married.
Mhm.
And so it was and then financially, I'm without a job, and all of that. So she said, have you considered relationship coaching? And I said, how is that different from counseling? other than I'm pretty sure my health insurance won't cover it. And she's like, you're right about that, at least so far. And she talked about how it's results oriented and responsibility oriented. And I learned that she was an ontologically trained coach. So fast forward, my husband and I just celebrated 39 years, I think. Yes.
The same guy?
Same guy, different marriage. Same
Okay,
guy,
okay,
different marriage. So
okay.
we ended up designing a whole, she asked me, if you could have the kind of marriage you would love to have, would you want to stay married to Jeff? And I said, I did not hesitate. I said yes. There was like no doubt in my mind. And she said, then I can help you. And so that was my first experience with ontological coaching. We started out as a couple, and she did the whole ethics, thing. There's can be a conflict of interest, blah, 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 all of that. We said we're good with it. And then we only had a handful of sessions together, and then we had individual sessions. So we were working on ourselves and how we were showing up in our marriage and in our lives. Right. So, and then later I continued to work with her as I became a coach, sort of as a second mentor coach. And so fast forward, I went through a different coach training program. I searched for coach training programs, and at that time, ACE's SEO was not really, it did not pop up. I didn't know it existed. I ended up joining ICF, and ACE was sponsoring at the time, they had space. Um, and they allowed the local ICF association to use their space for meetings. So I was going there, but nothing on the walls said the word ontology. So I didn't know what kind of coach training. I didn't investigate because I was already a trained coach and I had my PCC. I wasn't looking for a coach training. And then Dr. Maria Nemeth came to one of our chapter meetings and presented on the playing field and the four area of metaphysics, one of which was ontology. And I'm like, oh, ontology. That's what my coach had. I
Hmm.
want, it's like, I want that. And so I ended up signing up for Mastering Life's Energies, is what it was called at the time. Now, I think it's the ACE Foundational course or something like that.
Yes.
And my intention was only to take that class for personal development and the CCEs, right? The continuing coach education that you need for your credential. And I fell in love with the model. I fell in love with the ontological space, the feeling, the community, and the tools were, I describe them as simple and profound. They're very simple to understand. They make complex ideas simple, which isn't the same as easy.
Right. Right. Right.
Not the same as easy. That's like I just told the client today when I was introducing the 4 box and the green lens. I'm like, losing weight is simple. It is not easy.
That's right.
We can all relate to that, right? Or quitting
Yes.
smoking or any of those things, right? It's like, consume less than you burn. That's simple, right? But actually doing that is not so easy, right? Or it can feel that way.
Mhm.
Sometimes what I found is it's when I have been successful, it's like, this is not as hard as I thought it was going to be, right? It's easier than I expected. But it all is connected to mindset,
Yeah.
right? And undoing, dismantling a structure of knowing, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's how I ended up in the program. I had no intention of doing the whole coach training program, but I wanted to use these tools and models in my own practice. And Maria sealed the deal by offering to be my mentor coach if I signed up. And so I said, yes. I said yes. That's how it happened.
You're such a good storyteller. I'm telling you, you had me like all ears. There are so many things that you shared. For the audience, just so you'll know, we mentioned structures of knowing, and that basically means um, what are the thoughts or conclusions that we have in our mind that is our reality? Okay.
Mhm.
So, like for some people, a structure of knowing is it's easy to go walk for 2 miles. And for some people, their structure of knowing may be, oh my goodness, it's going to be difficult for me to walk 2 miles. And so many things go into how you get there. But in the end, it is how do you know something? How are you associated with it? What do you think about it? So that's that. And the foundational course that she's talking about is Mastering Your Life, which that course that is like the course. If there's no other course you take in your life,
Yeah.
that's like the course for you to take because of the level of transformation that we experience in that. But I want to go to something that you said earlier because, Tina, what is the value that you really demonstrate when you are having uncomfortable moments? And listening to your story, it's like your hero's journey is
Mhm.
like full of ups and downs. And for people who are listening, your hero's journey is basically what is your journey in life. And here at the Academy, we believe that everyone is a hero. So every day you're on your hero's journey. What are those values that you really demonstrate when you are having those difficult moments when you're on your hero's journey?
Oh, they're right here.
Yes, what are
These
they?
these are my standards of integrity. I am compassionate, powerful, trustworthy, empowering, generous, open-minded, brilliant, determined, creative, dependable, respectful, and playful. I
Mhm.
know they are mine because I see them in others. So that's how this list, like if I were making a list of myself, some of these words might not have made the list, but I was making the list about people I admire and then realizing these are qualities that are important to me and that are in me. You know, they are who I really am. When I am demonstrating these, I am at my truest self.
Is there, are there any ones in particular that really, because when you were talking about, wow, not only was I having problems in my marriage, but I was also unemployed. I was laid off. Are there any particular values that you really demonstrated more than any others during that time?
I think powerful, when I first came up with powerful and I worked with my coach. Actually, Powerful came up when I was working with my first ontological coach.
Mhm.
I didn't resonate with it because I associated it with power over as opposed to power with, right? But one of my homework assignments was to look up the definitions of the words. And one of the definitions of powerful or power was the ability to get things done. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's me. I can get things done. And so then I could own it, right? And so I think that powerful, that ability to move forward. My company's name is Strengths Partner, and the tagline is Move Forward Powerfully, because it is what we do, what we create is our power, right? We are each powerful. We don't always recognize it. I didn't recognize my own power at first until I started looking for where that was showing up in my life. So I would say that was one that came up. Generous. When I go to networking events, uh, I am most successful when I am more interested in what I can give than what I can get. So that served me really well. And while at first I thought my intention would be to find another internal job, the doors that seemed to be opening more easily was contract gigs and being self-employed. And I just started saying yes to things that were coming up, opportunities that were coming up for me. I like to say I started my business on training wheels because somebody who had their own consulting firm and who offered coaching as well. I had hired him when I was at the division level and worked with him for probably 5 years off and on. And he had said to me a couple of years before the layoff, "Hey, my business is growing and I'm hiring subcontractors. If you ever go out on your own, I would love to partner up." And so a couple of weeks after the layoff, after the dust settled and I was, I was settling into the new reality, I called him up and he said you couldn't have called at a better time. And he asked me if I wanted to be one of his coaches. And I said, yes, and I want to be trained. He's like, oh, you don't need that. Just get a couple of books. I'm like, no, I think I do. For me to be in integrity of saying I'm a professional coach, I want to be properly trained so that I'm not doing any harm and that I'm showing up truly as a coach. And so I signed up for my first coach training program. And it was 5 years later that I went through the Mastering Life Synergies course and fell in love with ACE.
What I love about your story is how, because we, as coaches, we really support people when they're in those uncomfortable places and spaces. And how one of the beliefs that we have is you can't take someone past the point that you haven't been. And so
Mhm.
you have been in some very difficult points, and it equipped you to be able to support your client to move past those points. What also resonates with me is that a part of my story as to how I got into coaching, I used to work for a nonprofit, just represent educators, and I was really feeling overwhelmed. It was one of those situations where the amount of emails, the number of phone calls, responding to members, and then doing the other pieces associated with the job because of political action and planning trainings. I loved it, but it was just a bit much and I was feeling overwhelmed. And I remember my supervisor said, oh, well, we'll get you a coach. And I said, okay, fine. I didn't know what a coach was. I just knew I needed help. And truthfully, the coach was absolutely horrible. He was
Oh,
horrible. But I knew that if this was done the right way, it could be so powerful
yes.
for the client. And I remember going through that. And then I'm like, and he got paid for this? And he was this lousy. So fast forward, I ended up having to walk away from that position because the values that I had and the values that the organization was demonstrating at the time were not in the same place. And I ended up going through some things associated with race. And I said,
Mm,
you know what? It's time for me to go because this is just not the ideal environment for me to be in anymore. So I was in a place I never thought I'd be in because I thought I was going to be employed there until I retired. And I just thought that was what I was going to do. So I hadn't planned on ever leaving a job. As a matter of fact, if anything, it was, oh, well, I'll leave a job for another job that I already secured, right? Not I'm
mhm.
just going to leave and be gone. And at the same time, I also learned that I was pregnant
Yeah.
and I knew I was going to be a single parent.
Mm.
So then it's like, well, who leaves a job and puts insurance on the line, right? I mean, and you're going to have a kid. Like, who does this? And I do that. Yes, I did it. And
Yeah,
but the
because you
outcome,
were brilliant and knew what was right for you.
thank you. True. That's true. And I just knew that my values, I just like you have your list of standards of integrity, I have my own, right? And
Mhm,
authentic is the first one on my list. And if I can't be who I am, and if who you are does not jive with who I am,
mhm.
I can appreciate you for who you are through the green lens and move on to another relationship that is going to be more beneficial for the both of us. So, that being said, when I got into coaching, it was also from a place of this is uncomfortable. I am experiencing resilience, even though it doesn't feel good, but I exercise these values that we learned in Mastering Your Life to be
Mhm.
able to move forward and discovering more of what my purpose is in life and what I am here to contribute, right? That's just what I really heard you saying. And so your
Yeah.
story just resonates with me. And I love your story even more because women sometimes shy away from how powerful we are. And when you shared your definition of power, it was like, I don't know,
Yeah,
it was like, this is not about, whacking your finger at somebody. It is
right.
really about how are you using your energy to move yourself forward, to move a situation forward, to experience what you want out of life.
Yeah.
There were so
Yeah.
many things that I just love that you said.
Yeah, and with power with, you're not moving someone forward, you're supporting them to move
Hmm.
forward, right? And
Mm,
that's what is so great about coaching is you're not creating the agenda, the client creates the agenda. It's their own brilliance, their own answers, and you can point to things or reflect back when maybe there's a limiting belief, which would be, a structure of knowing, as we mentioned
hmm,
earlier.
hmm,
Um, and reflecting back, I often will share some neuroscience. Not everything, but most of what I do in my coaching has neuroscience and positive psychology underpinning it, right? Uh, and how we talk to ourselves. I remind them that our brain is always listening and it tends to believe what we tell it. If you say you're not good at something, you're creating a belief that may not be true. And you could say, I'm not yet good, which invites improvement, right? It's priming your brain to say, I can get better at this, right? Maybe there's something I can do to get support, or maybe I can partner with someone else who's even better at this than I am. So there's so many benefits from working with a coach to see um, you can learn how you've been showing up that's contributing to the results that you're getting. That's what the relationship coach that my husband and I worked with, that was one of the big things that attracted me to it was when we were in counseling, we were pointing at each other. You do that, I'm
hmm,
reacting, blah, blah, blah. It's
hmm,
you, but you need to change.
hmm,
And we always felt like the counselor, the therapist, was more on one person's side than the other. And most of the time, it was more my side, unfortunately, for my husband. And the last one we worked with was more on his side. And I stuck with it because I felt like he needed the ally more than I did. And it still didn't it was not lasting. We would have temporary improvements as we practiced some communication skills or something, but we never learned to change our mindsets or look at what we were doing or not doing that was contributing to the results that we were getting. And the ontological approach does that, right? It has us look. So we learn to, instead of pointing the finger at each other, we learn to reflect back, what has me reacting this way? What's important to me about this? What do I need in this situation? What do I want to produce out of this? What do I want from my partner? What do I want for myself? And I still and will always have a red lens and a monkey mind,
hmm.
right? But I don't live there anymore, right? I don't
Yes.
live in that. I notice it when it comes up, and when I get upset or think something he did was wrong, like loading the dishwasher, right? The wrong way. I quickly realize that if it's important to me, I don't need to tell him. I can make the change myself because it's important to me. I know it's not important to him. I wouldn't want to have to change everything I'm doing because it's important to him if it's not important to me. Now, there may be some situations where if it's important enough that I might be willing, or he might be willing to make adjustments so that we're not hurting the other person, right? But loading the dishwasher wrong is not that big a deal. And I can recognize that. And so I no longer have to snip about that. I can joyfully rearrange it before I hit start.
Well, to our viewers, as you can see, this is evidence that your marriage can be saved, your relationships can be saved as a result of going through mastering your life and learning the different tools, hiring a relationship coach. And I love how you talked about the experience that you had with a therapist versus a coach. Um,
Mhm.
and it actually made me think about a client that I had and the outcome of her coaching session was that it actually supported her in being a better mate because I had no idea that she said to me after several sessions, yeah, this is what I'm doing so that I can stay in my marriage. Because she
Yeah.
actually came to me for something business wise, but as we know, the business, the lot, and what happens in life all merge together, and it's holographic. And for our viewers, what does that mean? Holographic means is what is happening in one space in your life. The likelihood of you operating in the same way is very high in another space of your life. How you interact with it, and in the end, she did end up being able to be in position to where instead of having a 6 hour drive when she was completely silent with her husband and vice versa, that changed to where they were actually able to meet up, have lunch, enjoy each other for lunch. And then he came out and said, you're fun now. You're enjoyable now. I'm enjoying my time with you. And then she's like, what? This is working, right?
Yes.
In the application of the green lens, and for people who are listening, like, what is the green lens? Well, just keep an eye out because every now and then we offer the green lens as a complimentary opportunity for you to learn how can you interact with people. What are the conclusions in your mind that you can actively change so that your interactions with someone are much better and much more productive. Because when we red lens, which we just naturally red lens because we are naturally looking for what is the problem, and that's
Hmm.
essentially the easiest way I can describe the red lens in a short amount of time. Um, that takes us out of who we really are because we're really not here for that. We really are here to manifest more of who we are internally. And so
Right.
I love how you said that a monkey mind is what happens when I'm mindfulness with doubt to worry, doubt to worry. So you'll be in a situation and you're experiencing it when you have one idea, and the next thing you know, your brain has another idea, and then you're popcorning in your mind and having this full conversation. That's when you're experiencing monkey mind because you're not sure about what to do. And again, we are designed to manifest great things and be a contribution and really demonstrate who we are. And so we're able, with a coach, you're able to identify these things and then learn tools to shift into a better
Yeah.
space. So with that, Tina, I heard you talk a little bit about what you really enjoy about coaching. Do you have any more to add about what you love about coaching?
Well, I think a lot of coaches might say the same things. The ahas, the new ways, the new perspectives that people get. Um, Sometimes it's dismantling a structure of knowing, like a belief that they've been carrying about themselves or others, and being able to see that it's not true. There's there and having compassion for the brain and why it comes up with some of these things. All of that. I mean, I love working with people who accept themselves and want to continuously improve and also care about the other people in their lives at work, at home, want to be supportive. So this is one of the reasons why I love working with leaders and their teams is there's a ripple effect. Every person you work with, there's a MCC coach, Janet Harvey, who has been on some ICF global events and has also spoke for our local Sacramento chapter. And she said something, I want to say it was like every person you coach, there's a ripple effect to like I need to look up the number, but I want to say it was like 16,000. It was like a
Mm.
really big number that it ripples out to because everyone there's this old commercial from the 80s or 90s for a shampoo is like I told two people, they told two people, and then it just like expands out.
Mhm.
And that's sort of how it can be in coaching is that you're coaching them on one thing, as you said, it might be their business, but they start applying it in other areas of their lives. And we're actually rewiring our brain as we begin to practice these new skills. And I like to use the metaphor of deer trail in the forest. The synaptic pathways in our brains are like deer trail in the forest. The more times you go down a particular trail, the wider and more defined it becomes, and it becomes a default. It's very easy to go down that trail. But when you go down a new trail,
Mhm.
the brush is thick, there might be thorns, it's very uncomfortable, and you have to
Mhm.
effort through it,
Mhm.
right? It's not
Mhm.
easy to just go down this wide trail. And
Mhm.
it's sort of like learning to drive,
Yeah.
right? When you first got behind the wheel of the car, there were all these things that you had to pay attention to, and you're worried about crashing, right?
Yes.
Or doing something wrong. And so when you're practicing new skills in communicating, for example, or using, shifting from the red lens to the green lens or in any of the other tools, it's uncomfortable. Our brain is not used to it. The more times you do it, the more time the deer go down a trail, the wider it becomes. And if they stop using the old trail, it grows over, just like in our brains, right? And so you actually rewire your brain the more you change your thinking and your behaviors then follow, right? And sometimes you can do it the other way. You can change your behavior and your thinking follows. I think it's a both and, not an either or. We can rewire our brains and become who we're meant to be, right? We can become the person we aspire to be.
I am just so inspired about how committed you are. And I see the enthusiasm as well as the compassion that you have for people and your commitment to just really being a masterful coach and sharing the beauty, the benefits of coaching just to so many people. I mean, I feel it. I feel it.
I can't think of anything better that I could do.
Mhm.
I love it. I love working with leaders and teams. I love working with individuals as well. Um, it's just, I appreciate every single, I fall in love a little with every one of my clients.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I do too.
There may be some that are more favorite than others.
Hmm.
And there's something I can find to appreciate about every single one of them. And they become part of my heart.
Wow. So as we bring this to a close, thank you for mentioning your ideal client because I heard you say leaders and teams. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I will say one of my favorite, I actually have two that come to mind
Hmm.
that were with teams. And one of them was a shorter term sort of offsite engagement. I did a needs assessment first, a focus group, and interviewed. It was a small team of like six people. And I interviewed each one of them. And that wasn't a focus group. I did individual interviews because it was a small team to find out what they wanted to produce, right?
Hmm.
And what is their idea of a high performing team? What's working well on your team and what isn't working as well that if you had a magic wand, what would you change about it kind of thing?
Hmm.
And so I had a list of questions that I was using and I designed, back then, it was before I hadn't gone through ACE, but I was a coach. And I did a offsite with them that was a little bit of training, but mostly coaching. So I brought in all of these tools. I first started with here's what you told me.
Hmm.
Here's the themes that came up. This is what you said you wanted to produce. Which of these is most important to you so that we can focus, narrow and focus. We'll get to as many of them as we can, but let's start with the most important. And so they did some dot voting and things like that. And at the end, um, the the leader of the team said, "I don't know how you did it, but you got my team to like open up and say things that they would never say to each other before. You just created this space that they felt comfortable doing it, and all of the tools were specific to our needs. So it wasn't like a regular training where you get all of these tools and you've got to figure out which ones can I use. They were like customized, and that's one of my specialties. Is I use Gallup strengths or just generalized strengths. And with the Gallup strengths, my number one strength is individualization, which means I see the unique gifts and talents in everyone, not just see them, but appreciate and invite them out to play, right? And it's also the concept of there is no one size fits all. People are
Mm-hmm.
individuals. And so I
Mm-hmm.
take a customized approach to my clients. I get curious about why do you want to have this event, right? What is it that you're wanting to produce? What's the outcome you want? And then how can we design it so that you can get that outcome? We might have to pare down based on the time we have, but it is customized, and therefore everything we do is going to be relevant to what you say you want. Um, and then the other one was a slightly larger team that I did a series of workshops and then coaching outside of the workshop. And I used started with strengths, and then I started introducing ACE tools. So this was after I'd been through ACE and had the Licensed Academy Trainer program. And one of the people on the team said, you know, if we were to actually implement all of this, it would be like magic. And I said, yeah, it will feel that way. It'll feel like magic, but it's really neuroscience. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this is how our brains work. It's not magic, but it can feel like magic when you start to understand how our brain works, which is part of the four box model, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is
Right.
a piece of it. Monkey mind is another piece of it. It's like all of these tools are grounded in neuroscience and positive psychology. So it is like magic when you actually get good at applying them, and that's why I'm still married today.
Wow. Wow, Tina, I just want to appreciate you so much for sharing your story, your hero's journey, and not just your professional one as a coach, but also your personal one as a wife. And if you are a leader, and if you have a team, and you all are really ready to level up and accomplish these things that you really want to do as a group or as a leader, as you can see, the Tina Shaw is who you should be contacting. So, Tina, please share with us what is the best way to get in contact with you?
So the best way would be to email me at Tina at strengths, multiple strengths, partner, one partner .com. I'm also on LinkedIn, www.linkedin.com/ Tina R. Shaw, all like one word. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm also on the board of ICF Sacramento. So if there are any coaches out there looking for an ICF chapter, don't have a local chapter, or if you're in our area, even if you're not, we have many, many events that are virtual. You can connect with me at icfsacramento.org or tina.shaw at icfsacramento.org.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate the contribution that you just made to our community. And there you have it. This is the Tina Shaw. And if you're interested in just exploring more of your power, this is the lady to contact. Because as you can see, it's all over her. And the compassion that you will feel when you experience her, like I'm experiencing right now, you won't forget Miss Tina Shaw. So with that, thank you so much for coming to
Thank
our
you.
Coach Spotlight, and we will see you all later at the next one. Take care.